Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to 3 News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney. It's Wednesday, October 21st, and I've got your top stories from WKYC.com and the WKYC app. And boy, do we have some top stories for you today. Thank you so much for choosing to be here to get filled in on what's impacting you here in Northeast Ohio. We start off with a major story for the LGBTQ plus community out of the Catholic Church. The head of the Catholic Church is endorsing same-sex civil unions for the very first time in his role as the head of the Catholic Church in a brand new documentary film that was just released today at the Rome Film Festival. Pope Francis, in the middle of the documentary, says homosexual people have the right to be in a family. They are children of God. This is in the feature-length documentary Francesco, which premiered Wednesday, as I said, today at the Rome Film Festival. In the documentary, the Pope also says you can't kick someone out of a family, nor make their life miserable for this, speaking about homosexuality. Now, we already knew that the Pope felt this way, but now he is saying this for the first time as the Pope, which is why this is such a big story for that community. It was while he was serving as Archbishop of Buenos Aires that Francis endorsed civil unions for gay couples as an alternative to same-sex marriages. Now, in the film Francesco, it goes beyond being just a biopic about the Pope. It's more of a visual survey of the world's crises and tragedies, with audio from the Pope providing possible ways to solve those issues. And that documentary covers issues the Pope cares about the most, including the environment, poverty, migration, racial and income inequality, and the people most affected by discrimination. So a big move there with that coming out today with the release of that documentary, again, for the first time in his role as the head of the Catholic Church, endorsing same-sex civil unions in that documentary. News here out of Ohio related to COVID-19. The state of Ohio is now on the travel quarantine list for Chicago, and it was previously recently added to those travel quarantine lists for Washington, D.C. and the state of New York. So beginning on Friday, travelers from Ohio will have to quarantine for 2 weeks if they go to Chicago once they arrive there. Mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, also added Colorado, Delaware, West Virginia, and Texas to the city's quarantine requirements. Lightfoot also said that she's thinking about reimposing strict guidelines on businesses in the city of Chicago that have previously been relaxed because of the current rise in COVID-19 cases, not only in Illinois, but around the country. Just to give you an idea of how things are looking for our near neighbor in Illinois right now, there are 350,000 just about cases of COVID-19, a little more than that, and they've had almost 10,000 COVID-19 reported deaths. Now, Illinois is very close to our population here in Ohio. They have about a population of 12.6 million. Here in Ohio, our population is about 11.7 million, so pretty on par in terms of the size of the people in Illinois. Ohio was also added to Washington, D.C.'s list. That happened on Monday as the cases continue to rise here in Ohio. Also in D.C., other states that were added include Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. And it was last week that Ohio was added to the quarantine list for the state of New York. So if Ohioans are traveling to Chicago, Washington, D.C., or the state of New York, they are being asked to quarantine for 2 weeks upon arrival as those cases continue to rise here in Ohio. Now let's talk about the COVID-19 numbers, the information that's coming out today. Here's some alarming information newly being reported from the Centers for Disease Control. A new report from the CDC estimates that since January, almost 300,000 more people have died than would typically die during that same time period in previous years. And at least 2 out of those 3 excess deaths are being attributed to COVID-19. The largest increase in deaths for certain population groups are among Hispanic or Latino people and also adults age 25 to 44. Looking closer at that excess death rate among 25 to 4-year-olds, it is up almost 27% over previous years. Now, that is the largest change for any age group. And again, looking at the broader scope here for those 300,000 excess deaths that we're seeing now this year as compared to previous years, 2 out of 3 of those excess deaths are being attributed to COVID-19. Now, here in Ohio in the last 24 hours, we saw another big jump in daily reported deaths, 66 daily reported deaths in the last 24 hours. Looking at the number of cases in the last 24 hours, another day where it's well over 2,366 new daily reported deaths related to COVID-19 here in Ohio. Our 7-day average positivity rate is still at 4.9%, which is just below the World Health Organization recommended threshold, but the last daily positivity rate is now over that threshold at 5.2%. So for all of the COVID-19 tests being done, these are the percent that are coming back positive. Now, with those new reported deaths in the last 24 hours, those 66 new reported deaths, now that brings the total of deaths that have happened related to COVID-19 here in Ohio to now 5,149. Hospitalizations are down significantly from yesterday, but still a high number, 135 new hospitalizations in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, there were 216 new hospitalizations. That was a record. That's the most hospitalizations we've seen in a single day since the pandemic hit us here in Ohio, since we became aware of that. The total number of people in the hospital right now is 1,252 that are being treated for COVID-19. That's up 30 from yesterday. And there are 345 of those people currently being treated in the intensive care unit. That's up 23 from yesterday. That's still about 28% of the people who are in the hospital being treated in the ICU. And we saw 35 new ICU admissions in the last 24 hours. Now, in terms of the hospital beds that are being used around the state, about 75% of our hospital beds are currently being used right now for something, for some patient that needs to be treated and has to be in a hospital bed. So about a quarter of our state's hospital beds are available right now for people that need to be treated in a hospital. Now let's take a look at the U.S. and global numbers that continue to rise. There are almost 1 million new cases globally in the last 3 days. We are just on the verge of that. And yes, the U.S. is keeping pace with that, with about 200,000 new cases in the U.S. in that same time span because, as we've said, and the percentages continue to hold true, with about 4% of the global population, the U.S. has about 20% of the COVID-19 cases and about 20% of the COVID-19 deaths. In the U.S. now, there is just under 8.3 million COVID-19 reported cases and now 221,460 COVID-19 deaths. These numbers come from Johns Hopkins University, by the way. Globally, remember, early Monday morning, globally hit just over 40 million cases. Well, the number now, as of just about 2 p.m., is 40,997,453. So almost 41 million. And the total number of deaths globally is now at 1,127,637. Now, we are making new developments when it comes to testing for COVID-19, specifically here in the greater Cleveland area. The Cleveland Clinic is working on something that's pretty exciting. Did you know, for example, that each person has a unique breath print that is made up of thousands of little compounds that we exhale, and a physician can tell a lot about us by the breath that we exhale. They can tell a lot about what's happening in our body. So right now, the Cleveland Clinic is working on developing a rapid COVID-19 breath test. And researchers say that this could potentially screen patients in about 1 minute, in about 60 seconds. It's non-invasive and it is a low-cost technology. So researchers obviously very anxious to get going on this. Researchers with the Cleveland Clinic are working with researchers from Breath Tech on a device that's already being used. This device is called the Breath Test 1000 Mass Spectrometer. And the researchers that are working on this are hoping that they'll be able to continue to develop that research to detect COVID-19 or related indicators that could show that someone might have COVID-19. So these researchers are hoping to open a clinical trial with the technology in the coming months. And clinic officials have said that this would expand on research that uses things found in our breath that we already know can detect certain diseases. Very exciting development there out of the Cleveland Clinic. We will obviously be watching that very closely, as testing, we know from the medical experts, is crucial to help monitor and try to stop the spread of COVID-19. Shifting gears now and looking at the upcoming presidential election, which is less than 2 weeks away now, just 13 days until Election Day. Former President Barack Obama is holding his first in-person rally for Joe Biden today. This will be a drive-in rally in Philadelphia where supporters will be listening to him from inside their cars over the radio. Now, prior to this, Barack Obama has been featured on podcasts. He's been on Twitch, that video game streaming platform that I know a lot of you already know about. He's been pushing voter registration messages on Snapchat. He also recorded a video for the Shade Room. If you're not aware, that is a Black-owned Instagram page and media company with a massive following, 21 million followers. It is run by an incredible businesswoman known as Angelica Nwandu. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Angelica when we were on an appearance together on the TD Jake show out in LA. Incredible businesswoman there. So that is one platform that Barack Obama has appeared on in order to be part of the campaign leading up to this time. Current Vice President Mike Pence will be campaigning in Cincinnati tonight at the Lunken Airport. This is a great time to remind you that we have your complete election guide up on WKYC.com. If you text the word VOTE to 216-344-3300, you will get everything you need to know for Election Day and leading up to that Election Day. So again, just text the word VOTE to 216-344-3300 to get filled in. You can get that WKYC election guide. We'll just text the link right to you. You'll have it right there in the palm of your hand. Now let's talk about the Cleveland Browns again for just a moment. The wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. had some interesting comments today about COVID-19 and his relationship with COVID-19. As you know, OBJ was sent home last week because he wasn't feeling well. He was tested just as a precaution for COVID-19. That came back negative. Well, OBJ said that he wasn't worried about that test, and he went on to say, this is a quote from him, "Not in an arrogant way. I just don't think COVID can get to me." He said, "I don't think it's going to get into this body. I don't want any part of it. It doesn't want any part of me. I think it's a mutual respect." So OBJ pretty confident there that COVID-19 wants nothing to do with him, and he definitely doesn't want anything to do with it. Now, as for letting the team know that he wasn't feeling well, he just said that he felt it was the right thing to do, and he didn't want anything to spread throughout the building if he did possibly have it, so he was trying to be adult and be precautionary about the situation. But OBJ was not happy about having to miss 2 days of practice, but he did acknowledge that that is just one of the realities that people have to deal with right now when they're playing in the NFL in 2020. And to be honest, with many teams affected and scheduling issues impacted, I wasn't really sure that we were going to have an NFL season, but we are having it, and the Browns are 4-2. So, whatever precautions are in place, they seem to be working, at least for some teams, for most teams. OBJ says, it's just what they have set up for this year. And yeah, it's not great, but that's what got voted on, and that's what they seem to think will work, and they just have to embrace it, and it's all part of the 2020 season. Speaking of OBJ, though, he has officially been banned from LSU for 2 years after that video went all over social media showing him handing cash to players. This is according to Sports Illustrated. Remember that video after the LSU Tigers won over Clemson, in the college football playoffs championship game back in January? Well, according to Sports Illustrated, OBJ handed out over $2,000 to the players in $100 bills, and that, my friends, is an NCAA violation. So because of that, OBJ has to stay away from LSU and their facilities for the next 2 years. Womp womp. We do have some good news, though, here in Cleveland. The city council has extended outdoor dining to seating in streets and parking lots at bars and restaurants through June of 2021. Now, you might be wondering how that's going to play out in the winter, but some restaurants are already adapting, like the Betts restaurant, which is in the Kimpton Schofield Hotel off of East 9th Street. They have greenhouses on their patio, and they seat between 2 and 6 people, and they say the greenhouses are sanitized between each one. So this is something that was first passed by the city council in June of this summer to try and help restaurants accommodate and have more space in outside dining spaces because there were closures to the indoor aspect of dining in order to help people be able to get out and patronize these businesses without being at such a great risk of spreading COVID-19. Well, now that's been extended through at least June, and City Council does say it does hope to extend that through November of 2021. So more than a year out from now in the near future. But at least as of right now, those outdoor spaces that have been temporarily used by restaurants will be able to continue to be used through June. One more story before we let you go here. There are changes coming to Netflix. We always want to know about what's happening with Netflix in the upcoming month, especially when we're doing a lot of binging of Netflix these days. So here are some of the things that are coming to Netflix in November. This is a much-awaited drop. Season 4 of The Crown is dropping on November 15th, and this will be the first look into Princess Diana's storyline on The Crown, so something people have been waiting for a long time. Also, there will be a new documentary about Shawn Mendes, following him on his world tour and checking in on his career success and his relationships. And here's a big one. Dawson's Creek will be coming to Netflix. That is a classic. I don't know about you, but I used to have watch parties for Dawson's Creek in my neighborhood when I was in middle school, and it will now be on Netflix, and I will be watching that for sure. But they will not have the original theme song, so we can't have everything we want, right? And for those of you who are already counting down to the holidays, there will be at least 14 holiday or Christmas-related films, and those are coming throughout the month of November. But when things come on, things have to go. So by the end of the month, Netflix will be removing many Brad Pitt favorites, including Moneyball, which I just happened to watch the other day, and Oceans 11, 12, and 13. So if you like those Brad Pitt favorites, make sure you watch those before they're gone at the end of November. Also, another one that's going away, a Matthew McConaughey favorite, The Lincoln Lawyer, another one that I actually happened to watch recently. So if you're into that, make sure you watch that before the end of the month. And here's a big one, you guys. All of Jeopardy. All of the Jeopardy specials on Netflix are going away by the end of November. So make sure you get your Alex Trebek fix before the end of November. That's your warning. You have been warned. That is it for your 3 News Now afternoon update for Wednesday, October 21st. I will see you next up on What's New at 5 p.m. with your trending stories in the Clicking in Cleveland segment, which you can watch for free live on the WKYC app. And the other thing that you can do right now while I have your attention is subscribe to the 3 News Now with Stephanie Haney podcast. If you're not doing that already, leave a rating, leave a review so that we can connect with more of you here in Northeast Ohio. I would really appreciate it. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Stay safe and be well. I'm Stephanie Haney.